This is a response to Oojamaflipper. Hello there, Ben. It's a response to the video you made, I think you made it yesterday, I certainly looked at it yesterday, about overpopulation. I haven't just looked at it just now, so I'm just going to pick up on one point of it rather than address all the things you talked about there, Ben. But it's specifically to do, I guess, with the image you held up from a newspaper of this family with 12 children. And I know in a previous video as well, we kind of exchanged comments to do with a large family, which you also had some thoughts around, which were perhaps slightly different to my own. But that kind of tabloid scaremongering about large families, I think, in a sense, is a bit of a diversion. Because if we're talking about population, we're talking about total population, and as you know, I'm sure, the population in most Western democracies, including the UK, is not rising. It's falling. I mean, there's some disagreement about the figures, and there's some complexity within those figures. But in general, we're not having far too many children in this country. So the whole idea, I mean, I don't want to go too much into Gary's argument, but the whole idea of bringing in any kind of system for legislating birth control and access to reproductive rights is a bit of a non-issue here, really. Most people in this country either have no children at all or just have a couple. A few people have 4 or 5, and in rare cases, people have a large number, like the person you pointed to who has 12. And we know how rare that is because when it happens, it hits the newspapers. It's that rare. It's news. So generally, I don't think it's an issue. There's several things flow out of that other thing. I mean, firstly, as I say, there's no real reason to put in legislation to give access to reproductive rights, given that there isn't an overall problem. But if you were to do that, I mean, what would be the effect of that? What would be the point of that? I mean, there's several effects. Firstly, the people it would affect are probably the least, the people who are least able to defend themselves and least able to protect themselves. The family you mentioned this time and the family you mentioned in the previous video there, Ooj, we're not well off. We're not talking about rich people here having lots and lots of, having a kind of dynasty of children that they can distribute around the world. We tend to be talking about poor families, and of course lots of the scaremongering around that is about these people sponging off the state by claiming benefits. But the flip side of that is that they're already poor. They're already an underclass, or they're already quite a long way down the pecking order. So what possible function would it serve to make it worse for these people by financial penalties or taking away their pensions or cutting their benefits? Quite apart from the fact that even if you did that, the people you'd be affecting wouldn't be the parents, who are like the guilty ones in this scenario. It'll be the children. Those are the people who would suffer. The sins of the father and the mother will be passed on to the kids. And do we really want to do that? I think not. I mean, secondly, in relation to that, one of the reasons why we have such a low birth rate in this country and why we have a kind of a reasonably sustainable population is because we're a successful Western democracy. There's lots of freedoms here. There's lots of freedoms for commerce. There's lots of freedoms for individual expression. There's lots and lots of freedoms, and that's one of the and those freedoms produce the conditions of education and emancipation which allow us to have small families. They're kind of linked, I suspect, and tinkering with the system so that we become more burdened by legislation, particularly the kind of legislation that reaches into the bedroom, would be counterproductive. We would lose our position as a forward-thinking, liberal Western democracy that people would want to be in, and people would want to thrive in, and people would want to have small families in, because that's the basic message, isn't it? No, the real problem is elsewhere. The real problem is spreading the emancipation and the education to the rest of the world. If you want to bring the global population down, or you want to stop it rising at least, we need to bring up the rest of the world up to our speed, and also we need to pull back our overall speed, not in terms of population, but in terms of footprint, in terms of energy usage, in terms of usage of resources. in terms of the whole getting and spending cycle that we enjoy so much. Yeah, I mean, massive differences would be made to, and already have been made and are being made, in terms of reducing global populations by making sure that women are emancipated and women and men are educated. That raises the whole that just raises the value of the society in which those events take place. People value their lives more. People don't want to be burdened with children, and don't need to be burdened with children as a kind of protection against old age. So those things come into put into place. Oh, and just one last thing about punishing large families, or at least depriving them of social benefits. Speaking as a father myself, I can tell you, that in many ways, parenting is its own punishment. It's enough of a punishment just having kids. And if you've got 12 of them, God, believe me, I would think you don't really need to be slapped around any more than you're already being slapped around. Yeah, that's it really. I mean, there are some problems which flow out of it, of course. Emancipation of the worldwide emancipation, worldwide education, if it could be managed, yes, would bring the population stable. It would probably stable out at around 8 or 9 billion, which is high, but let's say that that's stable and sustainable. Still too high, and far too high to have the kind of lifestyle we have. So we'd need to do radical changes to our own lifestyle. And personally, of course, as I said in previous videos, I would prefer it coming down from 8 or 9 billion to at least half that, and probably a lot less than that. And my own solutions toward that would be addressing end of life rather than beginning of life. But I think that's probably a subject for another video. Anyway, thanks for that, Ooj. Very interesting stuff.